Miss Dean. It's the second time I've done that.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
Touche.
We need a laugh here today. Thank you, Chairman McCall. Thank you, Ranking Member Meeks, for holding this hearing.
That was good. That was a good comeback.
Thank you, General Milley. Thank you, General McKenzie, for your extraordinary careers of service to this country and the sacrifice that both you and your families have made for the service of our country. I also recognize the very faithful service members of all of our military, some of whom are here today, but over the 20 years of the conflict in Afghanistan, the more than 2,400 who gave their lives for this country, for this democracy, for the rights that we prize here. I also recognize the Gold Star families who are in the room. You know I care desperately that you get the answers that you need, and I appreciate that both of our testifiers here today have talked about that it is a comprehensive look that you deserve. It is not about a single day or a single month. You deserve the answers to what went right with this war and what went wrong. To the Abbey Gate veterans and families, and I see veteran Sergeant Vargas Andrews and your family, thank you for being here yet again. I wanted to start quickly with the testimony before the House Armed Services Committee in September of 2021, where Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said of the timing of the evacuations, "As for when we started evacuations, we offered input to the State Department decision, mindful of their concerns that moving too soon might actually cause the very collapse of the Afghan government that we all wanted to avoid." I wanted to ask both of you, what role did the sudden, just almost instantaneous collapse of the Afghan government play in the events following the continuing evacuation and withdrawal? Can you speak to the utter collapse that seems to have surprised most people?
So operationally, the collapse meant that at HKIA, we depended upon Afghan support to hold the perimeter. They melted away. And that was probably the most significant immediate operational effect of the collapse of the Afghan government and the attendant collapse of the Afghan military. Now, we had a plan for that. We saw it as a possibility, but that's why we had to put in 6,000, almost 6,000 U.S. forces to replace those Afghans that had melted away. We would have been able to hold HKIA with a far smaller number of U.S. forces had the Afghans remained. But when the government collapsed, they went away. So that had a profound and immediate effect on everything else that followed.
General Milley?
Yeah, I think with respect to what General Austin was saying, that was a concern of the State Department, but there was a general consensus that with complete withdrawal of U.S. military forces was going to lead to a collapse of the government and the ANSF. The issue is timing, when that would happen. Most of the assessments indicated, the intelligence community assessments, were 12 to 24 months sort of thing. The military actually had a tighter assessment, and we estimated that the earliest time of complete collapse could be in the fall, maybe around Thanksgiving, something like that. Nothing indicated August per se. Having said that, though, I think that we certainly were advocating for the parallel withdrawal of the embassy personnel and the American citizens with the military, prior to the events of August.
And what role did President Ghani's leaving town?
I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I think it was collapsing anyway, but at that point in time, I don't want to make comparisons, I suppose, but you got Ghani and Zelensky, right? Zelensky stays, and his military stays in Kyiv, and you got a nation at war, and they're fighting tooth and nail. And then in this particular case, President Ghani, his entire cabinet, less one went up into the Panjshir Valley. The rest of them got on airplanes and took off out of their country. As soon as the ANSF saw that, they literally took their uniforms off, put their weapons down, and it collapsed. It was very, very quick.
As to the drawdown, if I could ask you both, and maybe it's more appropriate to General Milley, but I might be wrong. Under the Doha Agreement, the drawdown to 8,600 troops by June of 2020 was required. But my understanding is subsequent withdrawals were at President Trump's discretion. 4,500 by November of 2020, 2,500 by January of 21, as a new administration is about to take place. It didn't seem ideal by defense officials. On what basis did President Trump order the troop withdrawal to 2,500 in January of 2021?
Well, to back up, the requirement to go to 8,600 was 135 days after the signing of the Doha Agreement. And that was executed. Secretary Esper was the Secretary of Defense. Then Secretary Esper submitted a recommendation, and I concurred with it, to withdraw to 4,500 and hold at 4,500 until all the conditions were being met. Secretary Esper was removed from office on the 9th of November. On the 11th or 12th of November, I was handed a piece of paper with the President's signature on it, which had two sentences. One was withdraw all forces from Somalia by the 15th of December, and then withdraw all forces out of Afghanistan by the 15th of January. We went, the Acting Secretary of Defense Miller and I and others went over to the White House to confirm that order because we had not been consulted on that. So we did, and that order was then subsequently rescinded, and on the 17th of December or November, another order was received, signed by Robert O'Brien, the National Security Advisor to the President, which directed at that point to come down to 2,500. 2,500 was always given as the min force required by the military as a recommendation to two consecutive presidents.
And yet momentarily, the president, the former president, placed an order to withdraw everybody.
Well, there was a draw down to zero, and then you may recall, I think somebody had mentioned it, that there was kind of there was some discussion of everybody's home by Christmas, that kind of thing. But the actual formal orders is what I just discussed.
Again, I thank you for your service, and I thank all the military families.
Gentle lady's time's expired.